The story begins with our protagonist, Tajima and Euro, training in the forest. He repeatedly punches a tree while shouting Raider Punch continuously, causing terrible damage ever since he was a boy. Tajima has been obsessed with Kamen Rider. Kamen Rider is a hero in a TV show, and Tajima thought he was a hero unlike any other. He watched every episode repeatedly to the point where his mother wondered if there was something wrong with him. However, nothing else mattered to Tajima, as he would be completely engrossed every time he watched his hero. He would always cheer for Rider, telling him not to let Shocker, the terrible criminal organization, win. Even when his mother said goodbye, Tajima's eyes would not leave the screen for a second. He was completely captivated and even shouted Rider's moves like kick and punch. What Tajima admired most about Rider was how he always fought evil alone, with a heart full of justice. He swore that one day he would become exactly like his hero. However, Tajima also has a childhood memory where he stood watching a group of children playing rock paper scissors to decide who got to play Rider. Tajima disdained them. To him, it was no joke. He struck his signature pose and declared that he was very serious. Many years later, while in high school, Tajima was unexpectedly confessed to and asked out on a date by Emily, a beautiful blonde. His mind exploded with shock, but he quickly agreed anyway. Surprisingly, the girl immediately apologized, and laughter from the entire school echoed from upstairs. It turned out to be just a cruel prank. Emily was actually the girlfriend of the school bully, Kirigawa, and this confession was merely a punishment because she had lost a bet in a game. Tajima collapsed as the whole school laughed at him, but he wasn't angry. He simply walked away after being humiliated. Later, Emily sought out Tajima to apologize for deceiving him. She was clearly upset and admitted there was something special about him. More than half the boys at their school were bullies, but Tajima was not at all. However, she could tell he wasn't entirely normal either, as people often saw him shouting at the river while striking strange poses. Tajima didn't know how to respond, but he didn't need to, as the girl was captivated by his mystery, making the atmosphere between them incredibly ambiguous. But this moment was interrupted by a scoundrel named Ryota from another school and his gang. He mocked the idea that Tajima could be Emily's new boyfriend and stopped her. As they were about to leave, Tajima immediately stepped in, telling Ryota to let her go, while twisting his arm, causing extreme pain. He knocked Ryota down with a devastating punch directly to the face. Ryota's friends tried to retaliate, but Tajima shocked them by blocking both at once and then taking them down with 2 explosive kicks. Tajima calmly explained that he was only responding to what they had done, then dramatically walked away. A few days later, Emily was taken hostage by Ryota's gang to lure Tajima out and declare war. Facing the crowd, Tajima had another problem. He pointed out that petty school fights couldn't be called war. What? A bunch of brats who haven't worked a day in their lives are talking about reaching the top of the school and soloing this and that person. What do a bunch of kids sponging off their parents know about war? These words enraged them. Overwhelmed by numbers, Tajima received a brutal beating and was beaten to a pulp. Ryota declared he would take Emily as the spoils of war, amidst her desperate cries for help. When everyone in the school was helpless, Tojima miraculously stood up, stunning Ryota's gang. He took off his jacket and told the gang that he never wanted to use this power against them, but they left him no choice. He shouted Kamen Rider, which, as expected, was met with laughter. You're this old and you still believe in things like Kamen Rider? But the next second, a punch flew out and blew them all away. Just like that, Tajima cleanly dealt with the bullies. Emily was curious who he really was. Tajima dramatically turned and said, "I'm Kamen Rider." He thought everything would be perfect, but Emily fled in terror. Tojima's spirit was crushed. He realized the only enemy he should fight was Shocker. And so, 23 years passed. We return to the present, where Tojima is now a 40-year-old man, accepting that Kamen Rider and Shocker are just TV shows. No matter how hard he trained, he could not become a real Kamen Rider. Just then, a brown bear suddenly emerged from the forest. Tajima, on the contrary, breathed a sigh of relief, thinking it was a Shocker monster and getting his hopes up for nothing. The bear attacked. He gave it a direct over-the-shoulder throw, making it question its existence. Although the bear proved to be a formidable opponent and clawed at his chest, Tajima was equally matched, landing an elbow strike directly into its eye socket, causing the bear to flee. But he didn't even consider it a victory. At 40, Tajima decided to sell all his Kamen Rider accessories and memorabilia, reasoning that he was afraid if he died alone at home, the overflowing items in his room would be haphazardly discarded by others, a thought he couldn't bear. Soon after, while idly scrolling through his phone, He was amazed to discover a news article titled "Shocker Appears." He tremblingly clicked to read it, as this was something he had waited for his entire life. The report revealed it was just a convenience store robbery. The culprits wore masks and mimicked the strange sounds of Shocker on TV. This left him deeply disappointed, as it was not the level of crime that Shocker truly engaged in. At work, Tojima heard colleagues discussing the frequent Shocker Appears robberies. They simply assumed it was fans imitating, and Tojima also refused to believe it was the real Shocker. He heard the testimony of one arrested culprit. He said that just by putting on a hood and shouting, he felt stronger. However, Uzumaki found it utterly foolish. One night at the festival, Uzumaki was enjoying nostalgic takoyaki when Shocker appeared again. A mysterious man in a suit named Naka was recruiting some thugs for a mugging. He called himself a monster and them combatants. The thugs didn't like doing such embarrassing things, but Naka explained that he always preferred Shocker over Kamen Rider, and that's why he became a gangster. The thugs couldn't believe such an origin story was so stupid, but they had no choice but to obey. A few seconds later, they stormed and plundered a stall right where Tojima was standing. He was stunned to see a Shocker robbery right before his eyes. Hearing the cries for help from the stall owner, Tojima decided to act. He went to buy a Kamen Rider mask, but looking at it in his hand, he hesitated to put it on. It was a life he had left behind, but he knew he couldn't let Shocker get away with what they were doing. Tojima put on the mask, blood surging through him, heart pounding wildly. He stepped forward and declared, "Shocker has done enough." The thugs wondered who this weirdo was. Tojima trembled and announced, "I'm Kamen Rider." Tears streamed down his face as he thought this part of his life was gone forever. This only made the thugs mock him, but Naka and the crowd seemed amused. Tojima refused to be mocked and insisted he was very serious. He struck a powerful pose and loudly said Raider Punch, while crushing each thug one by one. The remaining big guy was taken down by a Raider kick from above. Everyone was completely silenced by his heroic act, but Tojima couldn't believe how amazing it felt. But realizing all eyes were on him, he snuck away before anyone could investigate. Elsewhere, a girl read the news about Kamen Rider defeating Shocker and was angry because she wanted to do it. First, she was offended by this Kamen Rider, who only wore a mask instead of a full suit like her, and she wondered who that guy thought he was. The next morning, Ms. Yuriko was on Mikan class, pouring her soul into a deep, profound poem for her students. Amidst a dreamy ray of students, Asano, the ultimate simp, turned on his simp lord mode, staring at her without blinking, as if she were his entire universe. The poem was about a guy crushing on someone else's wife, and Yuriko called out Asano's name. The young man, who was most focused on translating the last line to make it more stylish, realized to his dismay that he hadn't absorbed a single word, having been too busy pressing his teacher. So he remixed the poem into a full-blown declaration of love for his teacher, a 180-degree turn. Yuriko simply and gracefully flaunted her knowledge, correcting him, and Asano was left utterly embarrassed, wishing he could pull his pants over his head amidst the roaring laughter of the whole class. Back home, Asano continued to immerse himself in his simp universe, his mind soaring with thoughts of how much he loved Yuriko. He wished he could be with her right then, imagining all her elegant tastes, admiring exquisite paintings, gliding her fingers across a grand piano, or gracefully enjoying tea in a poetic garden. However, his dreams were not rosy, and reality was harsher than harsh. In truth, Yuriko was struggling with heavy weights, growling like a monster, and aggressively cursing a certain Kamen Rider who had disappeared from her sights. When she was a tiny tot, Yuriko was bullied by a gang of boys, running home crying a river. Her father wondered why his daughter didn't fight back. Yuriko explained that her enemies were all boys. Understanding the problem, her father knew exactly what his daughter needed to see. He put on an old Kamen Rider show for Yuriko, titled Stronger. Of course, Yuriko was initially confused, not understanding why she had to watch an antique TV show. But her father told her to just watch and she'd understand. In that episode, a female warrior named Tackle was introduced, and she declared that she would fight alongside Stronger. Yuriko's father had waited for this exact moment to show her, because Tackle was the first female warrior and Kamen Rider in history. Little Yuriko was immediately hooked, glued to the screen, watching her new idol defeat countless Shocker henchmen. Of course, fangirling meant going all the way. The little girl began practicing Tackle's electric wave attack, ending with her signature pose. Her father stood right beside her, meticulously checking every little detail to ensure his daughter mimicked her idol perfectly. He knew so much about Kamen Rider that he had memorized every single gesture of Tackle. One night, Yuriko was alone, spamming her electric wave move when she accidentally knocked over a stack of videotapes. Among them was episode 30 of Kamen Rider, an episode she had never seen. Yuriko put the tape in, but was immediately shocked by the title, Goodbye, Tackle. Her final battle. Unfortunately, that episode was a horrifying shock for Yuriko. Tackle was gravely wounded by an evil doctor, so to protect Stronger and ensure victory, she activated her ultimate skill, called the Ozone Cyclone. Yuriko panicked, not understanding what was happening. Witnessing the death of her idol was too great a shock for little Yuriko, and that traumatic experience had caused her to completely break down. Finally, Yuriko's father came home, horrified to find his daughter drowning in a sea of tears. As she slowly recovered, Yuriko could only wonder why Tackle had to die and why Stronger hadn't saved her. Her father explained that the enemy was too strong and she had no other choice. Her life ended, but Tackle had successfully carried the team and protected Stronger. The fact that Tackle saved Stronger brought a little comfort to Yuriko, and her father added that Tackle was, without a doubt, the greatest heroine. That's precisely why he named his daughter Yuriko after her. Immediately after, he revealed that he had made a costume for her to wear. It was Tackle's costume, and he declared that Tackle was not dead because she was right there in front of him. Yuriko was stunned, then burst into tears. She wondered if she truly was Tackle. Yuriko struck the characteristic pose, introduced herself as the electric wave human Tackle, and told her proud father that from now on, she would be Tackle. From that day forward, Yuriko strived to become more like Tackle every day. Now, she continued that path while working as a teacher. However, her hatred for this new Kamen Rider was boundless. She called him a fake, a fraud. She vented all her hatred onto the blackboard, but the students didn't understand what it meant. That night, Naka told his subordinates that they would attack a chain of 5 convenience stores. The guys couldn't believe they were still doing this ridiculous stuff, and were sure they'd soon be in jail if they kept increasing the crime rate. However, Naka didn't want to hear complaints and revealed that this time he would join the fight. He dramatically acted out that he was a warrior, but there was no longer a place for his kind in this era. His speech was over, so he told the group to get ready and make sure to put some soul into it this time. Elsewhere, Asano confessed that he liked Yuriko. Being confessed to by a student left Yuriko speechless, unable to utter a word. That time, Naka and his gang robbed one convenience store and moved on to the next. The guys panicked when they saw the police arrive, and Yuriko was stunned to see a shocker robbery happening right before her eyes. Naka wasn't afraid of the police, so he immediately punched one in the face. Asano, still lost in his own world, continued to confess his feelings to Yuriko, but she was horrified watching Shocker combat the police. The subordinates wondered if fighting the police was a good idea, but Naka had already moved on to the next convenience store. Yuriko's shock quickly turned to horror as she realized the Shocker robbers were about to escape. They had been her prey for so long, so she abandoned her student and chased after them. Elsewhere, at that moment, Tojima was reading an article about Kamen Rider's heroic deeds and still couldn't believe it was actually him. Just then, his jaw almost dropped when he encountered the Shocker robbers again. He put on his mask while saying transform, and struck the Kamen Rider pose. The henchman immediately recognized him as the guy who had beaten them up the other day, and Naka was clearly displeased. Tojima declared that he was Kamen Rider, and emotions welled up, but he then started to cry. Nearby, Asano desperately chased after the love of his life, but she was too focused on her target. However, things became even more toxic for her when she saw the person she hated the most. It was the guy who had taken down the Shocker robbers that she should have taken down first. Meanwhile, Tojima was ready to fight, so he told the Shocker henchman to charge. Yuriko clearly saw him trying to KS her prey again, but she refused to let that happen on her watch. She stripped off her clothes right in front of everyone. Nothing was more important to Yuriko than her goal, so she put on her Tackle uniform. Tojima was tired of Shocker just standing there. He dramatically began to say riot punch, but he was interrupted by Yuriko. Her attack sent him flying. The Shocker robbers didn't understand what was happening, and Yuriko struck her signature pose while introducing herself as the electric wave human Tackle. No one was more shocked than Tojima when he immediately recognized her as Tackle from the show, and she declared that Tackle was still alive. The henchman wondered if her body was the only thing that had matured, because her brain was still thinking like a child. However, Tojima couldn't believe his eyes, and Yuriko used her electric wave attack to send him flying straight into the other thugs. Everyone was astonished when Yuriko cleared out the villain team. Yuriko quickly retrieved her bag, and Asano thanked her for giving him the opportunity. Tojima took off his mask and wondered who that girl was. She was a complete mystery, but there was something else about her that captivated him. The next morning, Yuriko was delighted to see articles about Tackle this time. Afterwards, Naka and the group regrouped after their defeat. One of them asked what Naka was holding, so he revealed he had found a monster mask at a store. He wondered how he looked, but his subordinates were speechless. He announced that they would continue their work. Tonight, Naka declared that they would attack another convenience store at the nearby Joe Smart. Nearby, a streamer was talking to his chat. He revealed that he would buy 100,000 yen worth of snacks because it was peak content, and he cleared out an entire shelf. Just then, the shocker robbers arrived. They terrorized everyone, and Naka ordered the cashier to give him all the money. The girl just screamed for help without moving. Then, Shima, who wanted to be nearby and instead of doing anything useful, decided to change his title to Live Shocker Robbery. His viewership quickly reached 100,000, and he thought this was finally his moment to shine. Nearby, we see Tojima watching the live video, and he was rushing there with justice on his mind. He noticed a random girl rushing alongside him, and both wondered where they had met before. Back at the convenience store, a man told Naka that he was being annoying. Naka didn't know who this guy was, but the man simply explained that he was the one telling them to stop what they were doing. This man suddenly struck a shocker pose and immediately transformed. Naka and his group were stunned by what they had just witnessed, because this guy was clearly the real deal, and they were the fakes. He called Naka and his group shocker imposters and told them to listen carefully to the sound of the real thing. The game had just truly begun. The game has truly begun. At this moment, both Yuriko and our main character, Tojima, have finally arrived at their meeting point. Tojima hastily throws down his bag, pulls out his mask, and with the energy of a 40-year-old cosplayer, begins to act out the great Kamen Rider, posing as if in an opening scene. Yuriko, on the other hand, looks visibly bored. She takes off her glasses, changes her clothes, and bluntly tells Tojima that he's just an old man running around with a cheap, childish mask. The two start bickering, taunting each other about who should be more ashamed of what they're doing. Suddenly, the trio of shocker thugs are kicked out of the building, smashing through the glass. Naka freezes for a few seconds, realizing this time he's truly facing a real shocker. He slowly approaches and asks, "Is that guy the real deal?" The new shocker proudly admits it, and Naka is completely overwhelmed. Kneeling down and starting to talk about how he's been a huge shocker fan since he was a kid, and meeting a real shocker is like a dream come true. But before he can finish idolizing, the new shocker suddenly delivers an upward kick, sending Naka flying and sticking to the ceiling. As Naka's body falls, Tojima's face contorts in disbelief, and his eyes well up as he shouts, realizing he's truly standing before a flesh and blood shocker. He walks towards the shocker as if to embrace him, but just before getting close, he strikes a pose and unleashes a divine rider punch, blowing the shocker backward. The shocker, though stunned, is unharmed and quickly retaliates with a counterpunch, knocking our main character to the floor. Tojima continues to cry as the mask activates his neural connections, and he springs back up. But before he can attack again, Tako punches him aside and declares it's her turn. Yuriko snarls that she's not like the fake Kamen Rider and proudly calls herself the second Tako. Before delivering a powerful kick to the shocker, she knocks him down with a shocker move, and at that very moment, Tojima leaps high and delivers a rider kick to finish the fight. Tako complains that old men like Tojima shouldn't get in her way because it's too dangerous. And just as she says that, the lights suddenly go out. A new guy steps out, surrounded by a red aura, and calls the defeated shocker just a mere grunt. His tone is disgusted that mere humans could defeat a shocker. As a warning, he throws something onto the fallen shocker, and the poor guy begins to burn. The man's mouth then abnormally widens, revealing sharp fangs, making it clear he's not human. The next moment, a small, sharp arrow shoots out from his mouth, striking the new shocker and instantly vaporizing him into thin air. The new guy intends to step on Naka but stops, saying he's not in the mood for mass murder in one day. Our two heroes are frozen, staring in awe at the monster's figure. They both simultaneously shout shocker. Afterward, they go to a restaurant to debrief. Yuriko introduces herself first and then asks for our main character's name. Upon learning his age, she immediately points out the oddity of a 40-year-old man playing Kamen Rider. Tojima says he loves Kamen Rider more than any child. However, Yuriko finds it ridiculous. But Tojima is serious and reminds her that they just faced a real shocker not long ago. He also mentions the man with a mouth full of fangs like a beast. Yuriko admits the guy didn't look human, but says she still can't believe all these impossible things are suddenly happening. But Tojima still insists that the shocker and everything they saw was real, and taunts her by saying that if she calls herself Tako, she should be able to sense the presence of her real rival, Shocker. Just then, the store manager appears to refill their water and casually asks if they are talking about Shocker, making both of them freeze. The man then quietly sits down right next to Yuriko, intensifying the moment. He smiles and casually asks them if they really met a real shocker, mentioning that he even watched the live footage. Tojima asks who the guy actually is. The man replies that his name is Mitsuba Shimamura and he is the manager of this place. He surprises them further by calling out their names, and when Yuriko wonders how he knows all that, he admits that he's been eavesdropping on their conversation. When he says that he is also like them, Yuriko gets worried and tries to explain that they are not cosplay kids or anything. Mitsuba dismisses her concerns, saying he figured it out just by listening to what they were saying. He then gets straight to the point, declaring that Shocker is real and he himself is a witness. Hearing this, our two heroes lean forward with interest, and Mitsuba adds that it's a very long story, one that could easily take 6 hours to tell, and if they wanted, he could even write about 5 novels about it. Tojima is excited and insists on hearing the whole story. Mitsuba begins his long tale. Meanwhile, in the distance, a secret agent is quietly observing them, trying to gather information. The manager continued his story, saying it all started when he was about 6 years old. He and his older brother used to visit a house in the neighborhood that stood out, because it was surrounded by fruit trees and a vegetable garden full of ripe tomatoes and watermelons. One day as they passed by, the kind owner invited them in and gave them some bright red tomatoes. The brothers loved the taste so much that they started visiting more often. But soon enough, some neighbors began to complain about the owner's garden attracting too many insects, and 2 officials eventually showed up to warn him to stop what he was doing. The moment those guys saw the bugs crawling around, they panicked and ran off, saying they would return later to check if he had solved the problem. Soon after, Mitsuba showed up again, and the friendly owner gave them a watermelon to try. The next day, 2 thugs arrived in the neighborhood, declaring that they were there to burn down the man's house unless he cleaned up his garden. The thugs tried to act tough, but when the owner calmly offered them a tomato, they brushed it aside, saying they didn't need it. However, when he offered them persimmons instead, they initially refused. But the moment they tasted them, the flavor was so incredibly delicious that they couldn't stop eating. As Mitsuba continued his story, Yuriko interrupted him and asked, "What does all this have to do with Shocker?" She told him to get to the point, while Tojima, who was captivated, urged him to continue. Mitsuba went on, and said that just as the owner was about to speak again, one of the thugs suddenly punched him and whispered that a neighbor had paid them to do this. The thug warned the owner to clean up the place by next week or face the consequences. The owner calmly said that he didn't think he could live there anymore. The thugs smirked, thinking their threat had worked. Before anyone could react, the owner transformed into a Shocker. The manager and his brother were horrified as the creature beat the thugs to a pulp and entered the house. A moment later, flames spread throughout the building, and the manager and his brother came to their senses, pulled the thugs to their feet, and yelled at them to run before the place collapsed. After finishing his story, Mitsuba intended to start another, but Yuriko objected, saying she didn't have time for his endless stories, while Tojima, idle as ever, looked very excited at the idea of hearing another story. Just then, the girl who looked like the spy from earlier appeared, revealing herself to be a waitress working there, and scolded Mitsuba for chatting with customers instead of working, ordering him to get back to work. As she left, Mitsuba leaned in close and whispered to the two that he was dating the part-time waitress, and she was probably jealous because Yuriko is pretty. As he walked away, Tojima joked that his heart was burning while Yuriko sighed, clearly not intending to stay. Tojima then proudly declared that he was Kamen Rider, but this time Yuriko merely smiled instead of arguing. As she turned away, Tojima began to tremble violently before finally plucking up the courage to ask if she wanted to exchange contact information with him, and seeing how nervous he was, Yuriko agreed. Meanwhile, Mitsuba apologized to the waitress named Yukari, and when he shyly admitted that he liked her, she blushed and forgave him, rushing off, clearly very flustered. Though once she was gone, Mitsuba's expression hardened as he quietly realized that getting more deeply involved in all of this might only bring trouble. Even Yukari's expression changed as if she had something hidden deep inside. The next day, while Yuriko was teaching class, a boy named Asano, who clearly had a crush on her, started daydreaming about all sorts of things related to her. That evening, as he passed by the sports locker room, Asano discovered Yuriko being confronted by a strange girl. The girl suddenly confessed that she liked Yuriko, but soon enough, it became clear that the girl was actually Yukari, who had come because she didn't like the idea of her boyfriend getting closer to Yuriko. She began to complain about her boyfriend being a Kamen Rider fanatic who had spent his life trying to prove the existence of Shocker. She said, no girl gets to talk to him twice, and asked Yuriko if she knew why. After laughing like a maniac, Yukari finally explained that while her boyfriend was obsessed with finding Shocker, he never realized that his own girlfriend was one of them. The moment she said that, her body began to change, revealing her true form. While Yuriko stood there completely shocked by what she was seeing, Asano panicked after witnessing a real transformation, but his effeminate scream caused him to be caught. Yukari realized that he had just seen her true identity and decided that his life also had to end. Luckily for him, Yuriko was ready to transform, and she told Yukari that no one was going to die today. First, Yuriko introduces herself as the electrical conduit of human technology, but Yukari merely mocks her uniform. She declares that an outfit won't save Yuriko's life, but Yuriko kicks her straight across the room. Yuriko tells Asano to go home, but Yukari refuses to let him live after seeing her secret. She announces that she will take both of their pathetic human lives. But Yuriko points out that her little boyfriend is also human. Yukari's voice returns to her feminine tone to say that he doesn't count. But she immediately goes back to fighting like a monster. Her punches are furious, and Yuriko can only survive by dodging and blocking one with her leg. Yukari can't believe Yuriko lasted this long, so she reminds Yuriko that she is only human. Yukari intends to finish the fight with her next punch, but Yuriko only pretends that it hit her. In reality, she used Yukari's own attack for leverage. And Yuriko declares that her next move is called the Electric Wave Throw, an incredibly powerful attack as she slams Yukari to the ground, headfirst. Elsewhere, Tojima is exercising, but he is interrupted by a text message from Yuriko asking him to help her with something. Afterward, our heroes bring Yukari's unconscious body to Mitsuba. However, he cannot recognize who it is. So Yuriko reveals that his girlfriend is actually a member of Shocker. Mitsuba doesn't believe it at first, but her face is clearly identical, and he is horrified. Yuriko can't even imagine the pain he must be going through after discovering that the person he loves is in Shocker. But they also can't believe that he never noticed. In his shock, Mitsuba reveals that Shocker is also his entire family's sworn enemy. However, Tojima is incredibly curious about this new detail. So Mitsuba decides that he will have to tell them the next part of his story. It's called Mitsuba, Brother, and Evil Shocker Meet the Monster. Tojima can't wait to hear it, but Yuriko just hopes that this time he will get to the point. Mitsuba then goes on to explain that after learning about Shocker during the summer, he and his brother went to stay with their grandparents. One night, a couple of robbers suddenly appeared and beat up their grandfather. The robbers argued about how to tie him up, but Mitsuba's brother became enraged after seeing what they had done to his grandfather. His brother's name is Ichio, and his entire body filled with fury. And Ichio then showed some insane fighting skills as he began to beat the robber to a pulp. However, the robber had finally had enough, and he revealed that he was a Shocker combatant. This was the brother's second encounter with Shocker. However, he was not afraid. His powerful attacks pushed back the Shocker, but the Shocker kept counterattacking. Mitsuba also got punched, and the entire family was tied up. The robbers were wanted criminals because they had just committed another crime. But the woman couldn't understand one thing. That guy is a Shocker combatant, but he's committing crimes with a human like her. She didn't know why he would want to do that. However, because that meant both the police and Shocker would be after him. However, the other guy didn't care because he just thought they made a cool team like Bonnie and Clyde. Unfortunately for them, their little fantasy would have a terrifying end when Mitsuba's grandmother returned home today. Ichio quickly informed her that they were being robbed, and the robber was stunned at how huge this grandma was. This grandma punched a rake into the robber's shoulder, and she freed the entire family. She began to drag the robbers out of the house, but the other guy transformed back into a combatant. Ichio wanted to rush to help her, but the kind grandfather explained that she could handle herself quite well. However, they were shocked to hear a horrifying sound. They rushed outside, and what they saw next would haunt the two brothers for the rest of their lives. A giant monster had massacred all three of them, including their grandmother. The grandfather was completely horrified to see the lifeless body of the woman he loved. He called her name and furiously charged at the monster. Of course, he was no match for the creature, so it easily dealt with him with a single attack. The two brothers were frozen in terror, and the monster just lamented about how chaotic everything had become. It saw the two brothers, but just called them kids, and it flew away. The two brothers were completely helpless, and all they could do was sob for their deceased loved ones. Mitsuba says he's not sure, but that monster was most likely a Shocker monster. Just then, a voice confirmed that his grandparents had been destroyed by Shocker. His appearance was as dramatic as our heroes, and Yuriko couldn't believe the aura he was emitting. Mitsuba revealed that this was his brother, Ichio, and he had asked them to meet our heroes. Suddenly, Mitsuba realized that something bad might happen. The two brothers had been desperate for revenge against Shocker their entire lives. So Mitsuba didn't know what his brother would do if he saw Yukari in her Shocker form. It would certainly be a disaster, so he decided to try to hide it. Ichio spoke from a whirlwind as he flew into the sky, and he landed as dramatically as possible. Our heroes introduced themselves, and things became very tense when Tojima revealed that they had fought Shocker before. Ichio seemed almost angry after hearing this, and he demanded to know who they really were. But Yuriko couldn't understand why he was acting this way. But Tojima knew exactly what to do. Ichio was then amazed when Tojima performed the legendary pose while saying transform. Rider. But Ichio could barely contain himself as he witnessed this amazing transformation. And Tojima finished by putting on his mask while announcing that he was Kamen Rider. However, Ichio quickly regained his composure because he had a question he wanted to ask. It was really simple, so he just asked Tojima who the strongest Kamen Rider was. Tojima didn't even hesitate as he started to say it was the original, but Ichio interrupted him. He spectacularly performed the Kamen Rider pose himself. but he performed the V3 transformation pose. Ichio then declared that the strongest Kamen Rider was actually V3. Tojima, of course, had a big problem with this, so he told Ichio that he had better be ready to prove those words. The others were then shocked when Tojima directly challenged him, and Yuriko couldn't even understand what was happening. And Ichio explained that a mask wouldn't make anyone a real Kamen Rider, and he didn't need anything like that. He wasn't wearing any kind of costume at all and just struck the iconic V3 pose. His gaze was intense, and he asked Tojima if he could see V3. Tojima looked at him very closely and was completely shocked to realize that Ichio could actually embody V3 even without any uniform. Tojima declared that he could indeed see him, but Yuriko just thought they were both crazy. Ichio then dramatically explained that after his grandparents were brutally taken away, he abandoned his humanity and dedicated his entire being to revenge. Nothing mattered more to him than ensuring that the evil enemies would someday face justice. It was only through this arduous process that his soul became V3. Ichio had earned Tojima's respect, but that didn't mean V3 was the strongest. All it meant was that their fight would be a dream match between the first rider and V3. The two boys prepared to fight, but Yuriko still couldn't understand why they wanted to fight in the first place. Tojima started by using his signature rider punch, but he was shocked when Ichio used a punch to redirect him. Yuriko was amazed by the incredible technique, but Tojima couldn't even understand what had just happened. Ichio explained that V3 was given the combined power of Kamen Rider 1 and 2. Ichio was, of course, a big fan, so he wouldn't take that name if he didn't deserve it. That's why he tried to learn all kinds of martial arts. However, when it came to Tojima, Ichio could tell from one of his attacks that Tojima's fighting style was self-taught. Ichio then declared that the gap between them was insurmountable, and Tojima was simply no match for him. Because of these words, Yuriko decided that she would be the next to fight Ichio. Yuriko prepared to strike her pose, but she was angrily interrupted by Tojima. His demeanor had completely changed after his honor was insulted, so he told Yuriko to stay out of this. Fury was evident in his eyes as he declared that this fight was his and his alone. But Yuriko actually regretted getting caught up in the act, and Ichio was shocked when she changed back into her normal clothes. She allowed them to continue, but Ichio was still stunned by what he had seen. However, Tojima was in no mood for jokes, so he delivered a direct punch to Ichio's face. He reminded Ichio to focus on his opponent and charged into another rider punch. Ichio wondered if that was the only move he knew, and he easily dodged it. However, Tojima landed one of the punches, and Ichio was stunned by how heavy his fist was. There was a lot of power behind his punch, and Tojima landed a few more. However, Ichio had some insane acrobatic moves, and one of them was called the V3 tail spin kick. This attack amazed all the spectators, but Ichio couldn't believe his eyes when he saw Tojima just take the blow and block it. It was at this moment that Ichio realized something and he backed away. He still couldn't believe it, and he wondered if Tojima was a person with the same kind of soul as him. This exciting development only made him more eager for their battle. But everything came to an abrupt halt when Yukari woke up. Ichio took a little too long, but he finally zeroed in on her shocker belt. This was Mitsuba's worst nightmare as Ichio realized that she was part of Shocker, and he lost his mind. Yukari was horrified to see that she was still in her Shocker form, but it was too late to do anything as Ichio furiously charged at her. He poured all his vengeful fury into this single punch, but he was stunned when his own brother stopped him. Ichio was confused, created some distance, and demanded that his brother explain why he was protecting a Shocker. Mitsuba understood what she was, but he also explained that Yukari was his girlfriend. Yukari was finally more horrified than anyone when she realized that Mitsuba knew her secret. Ichio had never been angrier after hearing this, so he couldn't even believe it, and he told Mitsuba to repeat himself. However, Mitsuba didn't back down for a second, and once again said that Yukari might be a Shocker, but she was still his girlfriend. These were sweet words to Yukari's ears as she began to blush, and she also told Mitsuba to repeat himself. Mitsuba bravely said it a third time, so Yukari told him that she loved him more than anything. Ichio was horrified, but Yukari explained that she had something else to say. Mitsuba knew her identity now, so what they were doing couldn't continue. Her mission as a member of Shocker was to approach people who knew about their existence, and monitor them, if they had any comrades. Then her job was to make sure that they would take any knowledge they had straight to their graves. Unfortunately, Yukari had to do her job, so she sent out a signal. This signal was received by several normal-looking people across the city, but they all transformed as they rushed to Yukari's location. Our heroes were then stunned to find themselves surrounded by several Shocker combatants. Yukari apologized to her lover Mitsuba as she began to cry, and Mitsuba struggled to understand what was happening. Yukari told him one last time that she loved him, but declared that his life must now end. Surrounded by the Shocker thugs, the entire group was on edge. Yukari apologized to Mitsuba for betraying him, but suddenly the Shocker thugs charged to attack. They all froze in shock. Unexpectedly, Ichio delivered a sky-high kick, taking down the first Shocker. Then Tojima also stepped in and made quick work of another, while Yuriko took the opportunity to transform into Taco and beat the living daylights out of the last one. As the heroes began to clean up the grunts, Yukari screamed in terror, realizing she had just messed up big time. Ichio used a hammer kick to turn one guy's head into paste, while Yuriko lifted another guy into the air. He thought he was going to heaven, and she granted his wish by slamming him to the ground with full force. Then Tojima left a footprint on the last guy's face, sending him flying to the ground. Witnessing her comrades getting served a harsh beating, Yukari wondered why Shocker was losing to mere humans. Seeing that she was still standing there, Ichio prepared to finish her off. But Mitsuba stopped him. Ichio asked if he wanted to marry Yukari, which surprised everyone and made them fall backward. Mitsuba wondered why he suddenly brought up marrying Shin, but Ichio said that if a couple loves each other, they naturally have to get married. Yuriko thought he was going too far, but Tojima thought Ichio was right. Mitsuba asked if he could just have a friends with benefits relationship with Yukari, but Ichio refused to accept his lame ideas. He gave him two choices, marry or break up. Mitsuba struggled to make a decision. After looking around for a while, Mitsuba still tried to worm his way out of it, but Ichio punched him to the ground, forcing him to choose. Suddenly, the strange monster from the supermarket appeared behind them. Shocked to see him, Tojima quickly told Ichio that this man was a monster from Shocker. Shocked, Ichio asked if the man was really a monster, but the man was annoyed by his loud voice. Mitsuba asked Yukari if the monster was her boss, and she nodded. Meanwhile, Ichio demanded that the man confirm his identity, but he refused to answer, only saying that his loud voice was annoying. The man then told Ichio that he didn't cause as much trouble as he did, so he responded by punching him in the face. In front of everyone, Ichio ripped open the monster's lips to reveal his true hideous face. Ichio froze in shock, and the monster punched him. He blocked the first punch, but the monster quickly swung again and sent him flying into the air. He regained his balance after a struggle. He laughed, feeling satisfied that he had exposed the monster's true face. Nearby, Mitsuba told Yukari he would protect her before running off somewhere. As she watched him leave, she wondered why he would protect her even though she was a Shocker. Meanwhile, Ichio performed his Kamen Rider transformation to fight the monster. Seriously though, Tojima and Yuriko said they also wanted to transform. So the three started arguing about who got to go first, witnessing them fighting like children. The monster burst out laughing. Angered by its mocking laughter, Ichio rushed towards the monster before flying into the air. He unleashed his strongest supersonic kick, and the monster easily blocked it with one hand. It then lifted Ichio into the air before throwing him to the ground in a horrific fashion. Fortunately, Tojima appeared behind Ichio to catch him, taking advantage of the distraction. Yuriko tried to throw the monster, but it easily threw her back. However, Tojima punched the monster directly in the stomach, making it vomit in shock. After recovering from the punch, the creature threw Tojima into the wall. Then Ichio flew in from behind and beat it up with a series of kicks, before delivering a powerful slap to its face. Suddenly, the monster's human face was completely torn off, shocking everyone as they stared at it. The monster's true form finally appeared before the heroes, a ferocious fang alien monster, with creepy insect eyes. Seeing her boss in all his glory, Yukari trembled in fear while the monster challenged Ichio to attack again. As Ichio trembled in fear, the creature raised its hand to attack, warning that it would cut off his head. It delivered a horrifying punch to Ichio, who immediately jumped back to save his life. The destructive force of the monster's punch left a large hole in the ground, stunning everyone. However, it refused to let Ichio go and jumped at him to finish him off. As death approached, Ichio closed his eyes, but suddenly a metal cable bound the monster. Soon, more coils wrapped around the monster and pulled it back. So everyone turned to see who had done it. They saw Mitsuba standing there with a Kamen Rider mask on his face. Yukari wondered if it was really him. When Mitsuba nodded, Tojima was amazed to realize that he had transformed into Godzilla Man from Season 4 of Kamen Rider. Yukari pointed out that Mitsuba just changed clothes, but he corrected her, saying that he had Ichio ally transformed. Mitsuba fired all the coils from his cable launcher, completely binding the monster. With the monster bound, he told everyone to escape as soon as possible. Knowing that they were no match, the heroes got up to leave, but suddenly Yukari asked Mitsuba why he decided to become a Kamen Rider. When he realized she was interested in his past story, Mitsuba stopped everyone to gossip even though a life-threatening monster was 5 meters away from them. Mitsuba recalled watching Kamen Rider with his brother, where V3 had lost his entire family to Shocker. As he fought against the villains, V3 was seriously injured in a battle. Since he had lost the ability to fight, V3 asked Kamen Rider 1 and to turn him into a cyborg so he could continue fighting. Because V3's past story resonated with them, the two brothers were inspired by him and decided to model themselves after him. However, Ichio never let Mitsuba play V3 when they played, overpowering him as the older brother. Seeing his brother's passion for V3, Ichio told him that if he wanted to transform, he needed to beat him in a battle. Thinking he had just gotten a golden opportunity, Mitsuba immediately attacked him. However, Ichio easily punched him down and left, leaving the boy disappointed. Despite the humiliating defeat, Mitsuba never gave up and continued to challenge his brother even as years passed. A few years later, when both were adults, Mitsuba reminded his brother of his promise. Ichio once again accepted the challenge and charged into attack. He bombarded Mitsuba with a series of punches, but this time he actually caught his punch. Then Mitsuba kicked his brother away, surprising him with his Aikido technique. The battle continued for hours as the two brothers fought evenly, exchanging blows. As night fell, neither of them could defeat the other. Gasping for exhaustion, Mitsuba begged Ichio to let him also be V3. However, Ichio wiped his nose. Saying that only the person with the strongest belief in V3 deserved to be him, he proudly declared that he loved V3 the most, so Mitsuba could only become Riderman. Suddenly, Ichio raised his hand to break Mitsuba's right arm. As Mitsuba flinched, Ichio stopped his attack, considering his brother's feelings. However, he just broke his left arm instead, leaving the poor boy in a cast. After they returned home, Mitsuba wondered why Ichio was so proud of breaking his left arm. After giving him the Riderman mask, Ichio asked him if he understood why. But Mitsuba still couldn't comprehend. Ichio then explained that Mitsuba was the younger brother, so it made sense for him to be Riderman, V3's partner in the show. Riderman was a talented scientist, but his boss was jealous of him and dissolved his right arm in acid. However, another group of scientists admired Riderman's talent, so they arranged surgery for him to install a cable launcher on his arm. Although Mitsuba finally understood Ichio's reasoning, he wondered why he broke his left arm. Ichio explained that he was actually being kind to him by breaking his left arm, since Mitsuba was right-handed. When Ichio told Mitsuba he had truly become Riderman, he actually shed tears of emotion to thank his brother for his foolish kindness. Mitsuba retaliated by punching him with his right arm. In the present, Mitsuba had finally finished his story, and Yukari asked him if he was okay with being Riderman instead of V3. He revealed that, although he didn't like being Riderman at first, he fell in love with the character because Riderman was just a normal human, instead of having cyborg parts that boosted his strength. Riderman used his knowledge and cable launcher to perform heroic deeds, on par with the rest of the Kamen Riders. Tojima then wondered if Mitsuba designed his cable launcher himself, and he nodded. However, he reminded everyone that they needed to escape the area, but they all hesitated a little, looking at each other reluctantly. Even the monster man was confused as they started to run away. The creature used its telepathy to order Yukari to kill Mitsuba. Yukari froze after hearing her boss's command. Mitsuba turned to look at her, and Yukari hesitated for a moment before her mind suddenly went blank. Suddenly she punched Mitsuba to the ground, and the rest of the hero group stopped to see what had happened. On the ground, Mitsuba was shocked to see his lover betray him again, but she pinned him down and started mercilessly punching him in the face. Witnessing Shocker turning on his friend, the other heroes rushed to help. However, Mitsuba stopped them, saying he would handle the problem with his girlfriend himself. Mitsuba grabbed Yukari's hand to stop her, but she struggled free and delivered a powerful punch to him, seeing that he had no other option. Mitsuba suddenly declared his undying love for her, which stopped her instantly, while Yukari struggled with her emotions. Mitsuba apologized to her for not being able to make his choice in front of his brother. Feeling guilty for his weakness, Mitsuba told her that he loved her even if she was a shocker. Even if she was controlled by her boss, Yukari hesitated because of Mitsuba's passionate words. Suddenly he dropped a bombshell by declaring that he would marry her. While Yukari was stunned, the rest of the hero group was also shocked by his bold proposal. Finally, Yukari's loving emotions completely overwhelmed her boss's command, and she broke free from mind control. Crying tears of joy, she shouted in happiness and hugged Mitsuba, saying that she loved him too. While Yukari was completely out of control and began shamelessly displaying affection in public, the monster began to struggle against its restraints. A black aura suddenly surrounded the monster, and somehow it broke free from the reinforced cables strong enough to hold even tanks. In a fit of extreme rage, the monster unleashed its full power, transforming its body into a muscular and hairy form. As the final form monster stared at the heroes, they all immediately reacted with extreme excitement, overjoyed to witness a true humanoid monster standing before them. The ground shook with every step of the monster, and our heroes watched in terror as it prepared its claws to attack them. The beast roared that they would all die as it charged to attack, but Yukari unexpectedly rushed out to stop it. She sacrificed herself for Mitsuba, telling him to run, but the beast just threw her at the others. The Beast was confused by the female combatant's betrayal, but she didn't back down. She begged Mitsuba to leave, and she told the monster that she would handle it alone. Naturally, a group full of heroes, each sacrificing themselves so the others could escape, but Tojima was the only one they listened to. He explained that in episode 13 of Kamen Rider, the original rider was defeated by his enemy. However, after further training, he faced an army of resurrected monsters. He did it without a second's hesitation, and he soloed all of them. It was from that moment that Tojima decided he would be like Kamen Rider. Everyone gasped in amazement as he declared that Kamen Rider never backs down, and he prepared for his strongest punch ever. His battle cry could be heard from miles away, and this ultimate punch surprisingly knocked out the shocker monster. The Beast just continued to be confused by all of this, and it wondered what the hell Tojima even was. The monster noticed that everyone was watching, and it reminded itself that it couldn't expose Hawker's existence just because of this meaningless battle. It decided to bounce, and it made sure to liquefy all the combatants before leaving. Naturally, Tojima could barely contain his emotions because that brawl was the coolest thing ever. They all went to a pub afterward, but the waitress there was shocked to see Ichio, whom she called Big Brother. Her name was Futaba. She was actually the owner and manager of this pub, and she demanded to know what her two brothers were doing here. Ichio explained that he chose this place because he hadn't seen his sister in a long time, but Tojima's excellent deduction skills told him that they weren't getting along. There seemed to be a lot of family issues, and Mitsuba explained that Futaba was completely uninterested in Kamen Rider. Ichio told her that he just wanted a drink, but Futaba reminded him that he was banned. Mitsuba tried to appease her by explaining that they were here with friends, but she could tell that they were just more Kamen Rider fans. She wondered where these kinds of people came from, but that reminded her that she needed to treat her customers better. Futaba finally relented by giving Mitsuba a private room for their drinks, but she told them to keep quiet. If they caused any trouble, she promised she would make them regret it. After a few drinks, Ichio praised Tojima for the powerful rider punch he delivered to the Beast. Tojima even had to admit it was the best punch he had ever thrown, and he was glad to see that his years of training had finally paid off. Yuriko couldn't believe the guys were chugging beer, and she explained that there were some issues with this. First of all, not a single Kamen Rider in the show drank alcohol. Ichio wasn't interested in hearing her logic anymore, because there were more important matters at hand. He wasted no time and asked his brother and Yukari if it was time for the ceremony. The couple couldn't believe he wanted to do it right there in the pub, but Ichio seemed very serious. Everyone then watched in amazement as he began the wedding ceremony by himself. He thanked everyone for gathering on this auspicious day, and he declared that it was an honor to have them celebrate his foolish brother's wedding. However, he was too loud for Futaba, so she told him to stop his crazy speech and just buy some snacks. Ichio explained that he was officiating their brother's wedding, and he thought Futaba should be there for it. Mitsuba introduced Yukari to his sister, and Futaba couldn't believe how crazy they all were. She joined anyway, like a good sister, and she was just in time for Mitsuba's speech. Mitsuba explained that he couldn't be happier about this marriage, but there was one concern he needed to address. Yukari assumed it was about her being part of Shocker, but Mitsuba interrupted her to say that it wasn't. He had made it clear that it didn't matter to him before when he proposed to her. The problem he actually had was that Yukari never actually accepted his proposal. Mitsuba had rushed the proposal before, so now he was doing it properly. He asked Yukari to marry him, and she finally said yes. It was a beautiful moment. But Futaba still couldn't understand what all these crazy people were doing. Everyone else was happy for them, and the pretend priest said that they were now married. The other heroes introduced themselves to Futaba, and she could only wonder what was wrong with them. Yukari explained that she was a Shocker combatant, and she revealed how she got there. Her job was always to keep an eye on people who knew about Shocker's existence, and this was why she had asked Mitsuba out. She was surprised by how quickly Mitsuba accepted her invitation, but that was just how Mitsuba did things. All he really talked to her about was Kamen Rider, and specifically how Riderman was different from the others. It was strange at first, but eventually Yukari started to love how passionately Mitsuba talked about Kamen Rider. Now that she thought about it, Yukari believed that this was what reversed Shocker's brainwashing process. Unfortunately, this also meant that Shocker could end her life at any moment, but Mitsuba swore to protect her no matter what. They were clearly in love, but Futaba thought they were all crazy and she wanted no part of it. She tried to leave, but Ichio thought that their foolish sister should say a few words. Futaba hated being insulted, so she proved that she was also a fighter like her brothers by kneeing Ichio right in his stupid face. Ichio realized that he would have to transform before things got really bad, but our heroes told him that he couldn't because he would destroy the entire place. Futaba kicked him right in the face, but he revealed that he had just finished transforming. Futaba said that he looked no different, but she agreed to say a few words. However, Her words were actually for Ichio because she wanted to unleash years of anger she had towards him. She explained that it had been 10 years since 2nd grade, and she was still ostracized by everyone because of Ichio's foolish actions. A look into the past showed that Ichio always embarrassed Futaba in front of her friends. He would call them all shocker combatants as he told them to prepare to fight, and Futaba's friends would run away. Ichio simply explained that he was fighting Shocker, but Futaba pointed out that his obsession with Rider had turned her into an outcast. She was treated like a weirdo because of his actions. So now, she finally unleashed all her frustration by hitting Ichio. Futaba revealed that his actions affected her all the way through high school graduation, so she never had anyone she could call a friend. It was all because of Ichio, and now he had the nerve to bring all his friends to her bar. She started to choke him, but Mitsuba tried to stop her. Futaba congratulated Mitsuba because she was truly happy about his marriage, but she felt differently about Ichio. Her entire life was ruined because of Ichio, and she could never forgive him. Ichio used his V3 escape maneuver, and he showed that he hadn't changed at all as he declared that they were still fighting Shocker. Futaba then completely gave up on him, but she had one more thing to say. She then shocked everyone as she punched Ichio in the face while calling it the hurry up, and by some snacks attack, Ichio then took a good look at their team. Besides himself, they had Kamen Rider, Tackle Rider Man, and a female combatant. Ichio checked to make sure Yukari was ready to fight Shocker, and she confirmed that she would. As long as she was with Mitsuba, it was thanks to all of them that she was free now. So she promised to do her best. Ichio pointed out that all the best people had gathered to fight Shocker, so they needed to plan. It might take a while, so Ichio, who was drunk, called for another round of drinks. Elsewhere, the gangster groups were dealing drugs. The buyer's name was Matsuno, and he had his men weigh the drugs they were buying. The seller's name was Ryota, and he had his men count the money. Matsuno wanted to make things interesting while they waited, so he suggested some old-fashioned entertainment. He pointed out that gangsters didn't fight like they used to, and he proposed that one of his men fight one of Ryota's. Ryota was caught off guard by this, so he wondered if any of his men were confident in a fight. They all raised their hands, but it was clear that none of them were truly confident. However, they all changed their tune when Matsuno showed them what the prize would be for victory, and they all eagerly volunteered. Ryota assumed that Matsuno had a really strong guy just waiting to fight, and Matsuno confirmed that he did. Matsuno ordered one of his men to go call Naka, and we see that Naka was having a meeting with his own thugs. They were all disappointed after failing again, and Naka couldn't figure out what was wrong. They had even tried phone scams, but nothing they did seemed to work. Just then, Naka was called, and Naka dramatically said that he never thought his boss would actually do it. He feared that his life was about to end, so he thought about how cool it was to wear a monster mask during Shocker robberies. He told his men that they should really pig out at a restaurant after he finished this fight, and they all looked forward to it. Naka arrived, and Ryota could tell that he was a veteran. He wondered how old Naka was, and Naka revealed that he was 44 years old, which was even older than Ryota. So Ryota wondered if Naka would really be okay in a fight against a strong young man. Matsuno didn't care about any of that, and he explained the rules of the game. Any of the guys who could take down Naka would get 1 million yen. However, if Naka took down all 3 of them, then he would get 3 million yen. Saitama volunteered to be the first challenger, and he warned Naka that he had done judo in junior high and high school. He had also participated in the national championships when he was a senior. So Saitama was confident that 1 million yen would be his. He wondered what the winning conditions would be, like surrender or submission, but Matsuno just told him to hurry up because the winner would be obvious. Saitama confidently started the match, but he was immediately beaten to a pulp by Naka. Naka didn't do anything special, but he punched the life out of the guy with multiple punches to the face. Naka made it clear that he was the winner as he knocked Saitama unconscious, and he called for the next challenger. Rock Lee volunteered next because he wasn't afraid of Naka because he explained that he was also a former boxer. He showed his moves as he could deliver a punch, and he suggested that Naka take off his glasses before he smashed them to pieces. Naka calmly handed him his glasses, but he used this moment to headbutt Rocky's skull. Naka won again, and that left only one final opponent. His name was Ichio, and he explained that he was a washed-up sumo wrestler. He declared that taking him down wouldn't be easy, but Naka just kicked the guy in the groin. He had left himself wide open, and Naka finished him off with a punch to the face. Naka was awarded 3 million yen, but Ryota wanted to see if he could defeat the guy he had next. He offered Naka 5 million yen if he won, but Matsuno wondered if it was a good idea since he was betting most of the money he was getting paid in their deal. However, Ryota was confident that this next guy wouldn't lose because he said he would describe him as invincible. This excited Matsuno, and he wondered if Naka minded the challenge. Naka didn't mind, so the next opponent was brought out. This was shocking as it turned out to be the transformed shocker monster, and he ominously introduced himself as Komodo. Matsuno asks Naka if Komodo seems dangerous after checking his stats. Naka detects a weird aura from Komodo, but he doesn't think the guy is dangerous. He reports to his boss that Komodo seems tough, and they order the fight to begin. As the two fighters prepare to go all out, they're startled by gunshots from a distance. Naka's goons suddenly rush in, followed by a number of gunmen. As he quickly hides his crew behind him, the gunmen shoot Komodo along with the two bosses. Seeing his boss get hit, Naka throws a table at them and tells his goons to rush his boss to the hospital. He then flees with the rest of the gang. While the gunmen scour the room for the goods, Komodo's eyes shift to look at them. Meanwhile, Naka's goons are still terrified, so he tells them they're dealing with the real-deal criminals. He then gives them some cash to go have fun, saying he needs to protect his boss's honor. As Naka prepares to face the robbers, Komodo gets back up, shocking everyone. They wonder why the strange guy isn't dead after taking so many bullets and desperately keep shooting to put him down. However, Komodo suddenly transforms into his monster form and tears a robber to shreds right in front of Naka. Naka can only watch as the monster cleans house with the rest of the thieves. After finishing them off, the monster walks towards Naka. Seeing death approach, he has a flashback to his childhood. Back then, Naka was watching Kamen Rider defeat Shocker. Soon after, his dad came into the room and brought him some taiyaki fish-shaped cakes. Pleased with his son's praise, Naka's dad began explaining the special cooking methods he used, revealing that he had spent over $1,000,000 just to get the special mold. He thought he could run a successful business with this idea, and maybe Naka's mom would come back once he had enough money. Hearing this, Naka got excited and asked his dad if he would buy him a Kamen Rider costume after they got rich. Hopeful for the future, Naka's dad told him he would buy as many as he wanted. Soon after, he set up a taiyaki stall on the street, but no one ever bought anything. Seeing his father's disappointment, Naka tried to comfort him. However, as the days went by, no one visited his food stall, leaving the poor man completely devastated. One day, while Naka was drawing in his room, his dad came home. Naka happily ran out to greet him and showed off the Kamen Rider mask he had just made. However, his dad sadly said that he was closing the stall and moving in with the fat lady next door. She explained to Naka that his dad was deep in debt, so she was going to use him as her dog. Naka was horrified and asked what she meant. She said his dad didn't want to just disappear on his son, so he wanted to tell him the truth before leaving. As Naka realized the situation, he dropped his Kamen Rider mask in shock. The woman then left to give Naka's dad some final moments with his son. After she left, his dad begged him not to ask any more questions. He said that if he became her pet, he would be free of debt. He then told Naka to go live with his grandfather. From now on, as his father started to leave, he tried to stop him. Unfortunately, his dad shrugged him off, leaving his son to cry alone. The next day, Naka headed to his grandfather's house. On the way, he saw a group of kids playing Kamen Rider. As they argued over who got to be the hero, Naka approached them. He asked why everyone wanted to be Kamen Rider so badly. They told him Kamen Rider is a hero of justice. As they all gushed over the hero, Naka said Rider wasn't the coolest. He offered to be a shocker instead and told the others to be the riders. This confused them, since one Kamen Rider was usually enough to beat all the SHOCKERS. When the kids told Naka that Kamen Rider always fights against the odds to protect the innocent from monsters, he started to cry. Seeing him cry, they all started laughing and mocking him. Naka trembled as he remembered his poor father, who always tried his best to protect him from the world's cruelty. In the end, his dad wasn't strong enough to complete his mission, and no one came to save him. Angered by this reality, Naka told the kids that there are no heroes in real life. He passionately declared that he would become a shocker on his own and prove he didn't need anyone's help. Determined to prove the world wrong, the young Naka performed the shocker salute and shouted their slogan. In the present, Naka has been impaled by Komodo's claw. He asks the monster if he's a real shocker creature, while Komodo remains silent. Naka begs him to turn him into a shocker, performing the salute with his last bit of strength before dying. Elsewhere, Naka's goons are feasting on a steak and rice buffet. While stuffing their faces, one of them wonders if Naka is okay, the other to also feel guilty for completely forgetting about their boss. But the third one thinks it's fine to wait a little longer. As they go back to eating, Naka wakes up in a park somewhere, shocked that he's alive. Back at the restaurant, Naka's goons have finally finished eating. Just then, he walks into the room, and they are shocked by the blood on his shirt. Naka reassures them that he's fine and tries to remember what happened. Suddenly, the waitress comes over and reminds them they're closing soon, asking if they're ready to pay the bill. Naka nods, but has a heart attack after seeing that his idiotic goons spent 300,000 yen stuffing their faces. Feeling guilty, the guys give Naka his own money, so he pays the waitress. He then scolds them for eating so much and sits down. Naka tells them they shouldn't follow him anymore, but they refuse to leave. Remembering what happened, Naka raises his hand in the shocker salute. Suddenly, it transforms him into a real shocker, leaving him and his goons completely stunned. Afterwards, they all leave the restaurant and ask how he transformed. They then realize Naka's shocker outfit is over the top for the public, so he reverts to his normal form. Seeing the instant transformation, the goons are impressed and wonder if Naka can control it at will. He tries to transform again, and it easily turns him into a shocker and back. Naka proudly praises the shocker technology and explains that he was actually killed by Komodo. Somehow, Komodo had turned him into a shocker. So, Naka wonders if his childhood dream is about to come true. His goons ask him to transform again, saying they've never seen him so happy before. Naka feels embarrassed but decides to indulge them. However, his goons join in on the fun and perform the shocker salute with him. Naka tells them they're doing it wrong and shows them the real transformation as he transforms for the billionth time. His goons keep gassing him up. Then, one of them asks Naka if he can carry him. He easily lifts him in a princess carry, excited by his own strength. The other to climb on top, but Naka handles their extra weight with his shocker strength. Afterwards, he sits on a bench, and the goons wonder if he's tired. The fat one offers him some taiyaki he bought, while another asks what will happen to their gang since their boss, Matsuno, died in the attack. Naka thinks their gang will disband, shocked by this news. The goons swear they'll stick with him no matter what. Naka remains silent as they start to finish the food. However, Naka tells them to retire from the gang, which they refuse. As the goons start to cry, Naka tells them it's normal for things to come to an end. He remembers how their mafia boss lost his life in an instant, and how his own father ruined his life. Naka thinks the young men should focus on safer careers, but they shut him up with a piece of taiyaki. As the flavor fills his mouth, Naka is stunned. He asks the goons where they bought it, and they point to a nearby street stall. Seeing the stall, Naka gets up and walks towards it. Meanwhile, some thugs are harassing the stall owner, saying he set up on their territory without permission. The owner tells them he got permission from the Matsuno gang, but they refuse to listen. Then, as Naka gets closer, the thug leader recognizes him. Since Naka doesn't know the thug, he ignores him and walks closer. When he finally sees the familiar stall up close, he realizes the old man is his own father. Seeing his old man in such a desperate state, Naka starts to cry, wondering how hard life must have been for him. After his traumatic childhood, Naka thought he didn't need any hopes or dreams. However, his father continued to live and try his best despite suffering so much. As Naka remains frozen in his emotional state, the thug starts breaking his dad's stall, snapping Naka out of it. He tries to stop him, but the thug says his dad never got permission. The old man insists he got permission from the Matsuno gang, but the thug claims the gang has been defeated. Finally, Naka realizes the thug's gang is responsible for raiding and killing his boss. Angered, he tells the thug that the Matsuno gang is still alive because he's still here. The thug lunges at him with his bat, but Naka stops it. He then kicks the thug in the gut before taking his baseball bat. After hitting a home run into the thug's back, Naka realizes his goons have been beaten up by his partner. When the large man notices, he starts walking over him. He takes out the thug leader with a bat before slamming the large man's stomach with it. The giant man is hurt but absorbs the blow and takes out Naka with a massive strike. Somehow, Naka gets up from the devastating blow, which surprises him. He asks the large man if he's done any martial arts. The man reveals he used to do wrestling. Naka says he loves wrestling too, but the man keeps knocking him down. Then Naka starts raising his hand for the shocker salute, while the wrestler rushes to finish him off. With the power of the shocker suit, Naka catches the man's fist before crushing him with a tiger throw. Once the wrestler is defeated, Naka tells his dad to call the police. He also gives him permission to keep his stall, and the old man apologizes since he doesn't recognize Naka after he's grown up so much. His dad asks for his real identity. However, Naka decides to keep it a secret and tells the old man that he's just a passing by shocker. The next day, as Tojima is scrolling through his phone, he gets news that a righteous shocker has appeared, defending an old man. He shows the news to his hero friends, who all start shaking their heads at the absurd idea. The next day, while Tojima was scrolling through his phone, he received news that a righteous shocker had appeared, someone who had protected an old man. He showed the news to his hero friends, but they all shook their heads at the absurd idea. Tojima wondered if a righteous shocker could truly exist, but Ichio thought there was no way that could happen. Right nearby, Yukari reminded him that she was right there and boldly declared that she was a righteous shocker who had married a hero. Ichio had to give in to her intense demands before recalling their final battle with Komodo. He asked the heroes if a human could defeat a monster, but none of them thought it was possible. Seeing their silence, Ichio reminded them that Tojima could still take him down with his full strength. He believed Tojima was their ray of hope. Ichio then declared he would do his best to defeat Tojima. Tojima wondered why he wanted to fight, so Ichio reminded him that they hadn't been able to finish their final battle yet. He then announced that they would organize a tournament for all the heroes, which surprised them. Ichio asked everyone what they should do whenever a powerful villain appeared, and they all told him they needed to train. Satisfied with their answer, he told everyone they had 10 days of special training before competing in the tournament, to decide who among them was the strongest. When Ichio invited everyone to fight in the tournament, Yukari wondered if she was included. While everyone else agreed, Yukari was still confused, and Ichio asked them again if they would join the plan. As the rest of the heroes agreed, Yukari asked Mitsuba why they were all fighting each other. He explained that Ichio wanted them to train and fight together to gain more strength, so they could be ready the next time they faced a monster. At this crazy reasoning, Yukari screamed in shock. Afterward, Ichio got on his motorcycle and left the cafe. Tojima was impressed by his bike, so Ichio told them he had attached a Kamen Rider mask to its headlight. Watching the two of them gush over the bike, Yuriko wondered why these grown men were so obsessed with the mask. Elsewhere, as a group of friends was heading home, a woman named Riko intercepted one of them in an alley. She demanded to speak with Tanaka. The others wondered if she was his girlfriend. Tanaka told his friends to give him some privacy, so they moved on. After they left, Riko approached Tanaka with a threatening expression. She asked him why he had betrayed Shocker. He acted as if he didn't know what she was talking about, because Riko kept staring at him. The boy transformed into his Shocker form to fight her for his life. Although he tried to attack her, she killed him with just one punch. Elsewhere, a woman waited on a park bench for her lover to propose. Meanwhile, the man holding the wedding ring felt nervous about the whole proposal. Holding the ring box in his hand, the man wondered what the best way to give it to his lover was. Suddenly, Riko appeared behind him and asked why he had escaped Shocker's mind control. Although the man felt shocked, he transformed into his Shocker form to fight back. While his girlfriend waited for him in the park, Riko ruthlessly murdered the man, ruining both his life and his lover's. Elsewhere, a man named Takagi was walking home while calling his daughter. Soon, Riko approached him, so Takagi noted that she must be the one who killed the Shocker defectors. He then set his grocery bags on the ground while Riko noted that he had lived a good life. Surprisingly, Takagi took out a knife and told her that taking care of a family was much harder than being a Shocker warrior. She asked him why he had escaped the mind control, so he told her it was because of love. Since Riko didn't know what love was, Takagi told her that she could also be happy if she understood. Suddenly, he transformed into his Shocker form and attacked Riko, who narrowly dodged his attack. After stabbing her arm, Takagi told her that a Shocker warrior could only gain power depending on how strong they were. Before transforming, although Riko tried to strike back, Takagi evaded her blow and punched her in the face, revealing that he used to fight in the military. As he continued his assault, he confidently declared that a mediocre warrior like her could never defeat him. Takagi then said he was fighting to protect his family and kicked Riko in the stomach. He declared that with the power of love on his side, he could even face a Shocker monster as an equal. Suddenly, a bat monster fell and crushed Takagi's head to powder, saying it was impossible for any warrior to challenge them. In front of her superior, Riko quickly knelt, and the bat monster bit his own hand. He then told her to drink blood from his wound, saying it would make her stronger. Overjoyed by the gift, Riko quickly began drinking the blood to transform herself. Back at home, Ichio continued training while imagining a battle with Komodo. In every scenario he tried, Komodo easily defeated him, leaving Ichio completely disappointed. Despite this, he continued to train hard to defeat the monster, but it kept blocking all of his attacks. Gasping for breath from exhaustion, Ichio recalled how Tojima was able to punch the monster away, and he thought he had not yet reached that level of strength. As he imagined all these scenes in his head, some nearby middle school students wondered who the strange man babbling in their yard was. Meanwhile, Yuriko trained at a gym where she beat a poor punching bag to a pulp. While punching, Yuriko thought she needed to push past her limits and become even faster, otherwise she would be no match for Komodo. After all her intense efforts, she perfected her technique and developed it to a new level. Elsewhere, Yukari trained with Mitsuba, who easily dodged her attacks and threw her down. While she was shocked by his speed, Mitsuba admitted that he couldn't match her strength. Knowing that Komodo was much stronger than her, he thought the only way he could win was to dodge all of his opponent's attacks. Then Mitsuba told Yukari he would master Aikido, so she asked if he wouldn't be using his cable arm. He told her that the arm was only for fighting monsters, so he would fight using only his own strength in the tournament. When he declared he was training to surpass his older brother, Yukari was impressed by Mitsuba's determination. Looking at his face, she felt a strong surge of love rise up and attacked him with her mouth. Afterward, Mitsuba lay on the floor, completely defeated by his wife, wondering why his mask didn't cover his whole face. Back in the forest, Tojima continued training against a poor tree, punching and kicking it. He felt it was unbelievable that he had actually fought Shocker for the first time in his life. As he shouted, the bear from before reappeared to challenge him. Seeing the bear's anger, Tojima asked if it wanted to train with him. After telling the bear he wouldn't go easy on it, he put on his mask and challenged it to attack. Roaring in fury, the bear lunged at him, but he stopped it with a stunning blow. After being knocked back, the bear began to wonder if Tojima was even human. However, it continued to fight, refusing to give up against a human. After the bear's headbutt knocked Tojima into a tree, he bounced back with a kick to its neck. Then the bear swiped at him with its massive paw, but Tojima blocked it before sending the bear flying with another punch. Enraged, the bear roared in disbelief. but Tojima ran up a tree and unleashed his strongest Raider kick. Seeing death approaching from the sky, the bear did what anyone else would do. It quickly admitted defeat and surrendered. Tojima, who still landed the kick directly into its stomach, left the poor bear stunned as it ran away, while Tojima thanked it for the training session. Afterward, he walked up a cliff and looked at the scenery, thinking about everything that had happened.